Welcome to another episode of the Emotional Men Podcast. My name is Taylor McCary. I'm a licensed a licensed mental health practitioner, a licensed therapist based in the Austin, Round Rock, Texas area. With me as always is Pete.
Hi, my name is Pete. I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
What kind of clinical social worker, Pete? Give me your entire history, please.
I sleep on the left side of the bed, like long walks on the beach. I'm bald. I wear glasses. I don't have any big medical issues.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. And today we have a special guest, Miss Latina Griffin. Say hello, Miss Latina Griffin.
Hello, Pete.
Hello.
Hi, Latina.
Latina is joining us today because we have a fun conversation. We're going to talk about sex. That's right. Sex.
Taylor enjoys making people feel uncomfortable. This is going to be a carnival ride for him today.
Legitimately, I was kind of thinking that we could start off by playing the penis game or just saying penis and vagina just to get it out of the way. So Pete doesn't laugh, because he will laugh. Anytime he even thinks of a word that begins with P, he goes,
No, honestly, we decided to start using body part names, the actual names, with my kids. And I realized recently that, like, when he said it and I'm like, oh, it's on your penis itches. We were like in a shopping center or something. And it was just a natural, like, oh, that's the body part that itches. So I'll have you know that I use the real body parts, and I didn't giggle, because sometimes it itches.
Proud of you.
Thank you,
I am
Latina.
also
See,
proud of you.
Thank you, Latina. That's how it works, Taylor. I do something hard, and someone says I'm proud of you. That's how relationships work.
We really have Latina on today so that Pete finally has somebody on his side. He just needs it so desperately.
I do.
No, today, because we are talking about sex, Latina is especially qualified to talk about this. The very short form version of this is Latina's primary specialty is trauma stemming from sexual betrayal, so infidelity. But I told her that I'm going to read every single letter behind her name. So here we go. Latina is if you see her name, it's Latina Griffin, LCSW, CCTP, CPTT, CCPS, CSAT, CBT, IFS specialties. There you go.
Oh,
it's a real alphabet soup. Latina, what does that mean?
It means that we just feel better when we have letters after our names. So we gather them.
Yes.
Basically, what I specialize in trauma, but specifically, as you said, trauma from infidelity, and not standard infidelity. So not that there's any such thing as standard infidelity, but usually these are people that come to me after discovery of some kind of long-term chronic betrayal, often lasting or started before they were even married. And I also am a certified sexual addiction therapist, so I work on the other side of this as well with people who, again, I don't like the word sexual addiction get really, there's some controversy around those, and we can talk about that later. But basically people who have severe problematic, compulsive, impulsive sexual behaviors. And I work primarily with women with these struggles, which shocks people all the time. Neither one of you flinched, which I'm really impressed. But so again, I work on both sides of it, but I would say about 60% of my practice is with people who are working with the betrayal side.
Okay. And so when you say you work with women, are you talking about women who have been betrayed, or are you talking about women who are struggling with impulsivity around sex?
I work with men and women who've been betrayed, and primarily with women who are struggling with impulsivity around sex. And so if a male comes to me, I usually refer them out.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that women are actually also sexual beings?
Correct. But this isn't even about being sexual beings. This is about impulsive and compulsivity around sexual misstepping. And actually, the sexual beings part actually probably applies more to the betrayed women, because there's a huge part of their sexuality that's been taken from them as a result.
Interesting.
Of their partner's betrayals.
I am really looking forward to this conversation, if I'm being perfectly honest. And part of that is I know Latina. I've known Latina for years. I've known you for 6-7 years at this point, I think. We used to have our offices across the hall from each other, Pete. That's how we met.
Oh,
and so Yeah, I know Latina as a clinician, as a friend. I know her to be very intelligent and very compassionate and good at her job. So I'm really excited by that. And I'm curious, Latina, how did you get from trauma to specifically sexual trauma, betrayal, sexual trauma?
This is a good question. So this is one of those I couldn't even make this up if I tried stories. I got a call from a gentleman who was moving from Colorado to Austin and said, I am moving my practice. I specialize in sexual addiction, and I need someone in Round Rock, the city that borders Austin, who is a trauma specialist who can work with the betrayed partners of my clients, because he works primarily with the sexual addiction side. And I like, what is this craziness that you're talking about? I've never heard of this. And he explained it and told me the names of like APSATs and the ITAP. These are again, some of those letters that we alphabet soup things, of organizations that specialize in this trauma. And would you be interested? That's weird. Let me look it up. So I did, which normally I would have just said no. But when I looked it
Hmm.
up, I realized that that week I had two women on my couch who I'm trying to treat for anxiety and depression. And why are you acting like this? And what was being described to me on these websites was what I was seeing in my office.
Hmm.
And as I'm reading through this, basically it looks like post-traumatic stress disorder, where if I don't know how familiar y'all are with that, but we're looking at avoidance of places, re-experiencing things, even re-experiencing things that you didn't experience. You're familiar, Pete, you're familiar with military work. So this is probably all, it's really fascinating. Um, and again, they're competing, the negative alterations in mood, just all of these things. I'm like, whoa, okay, so this is a thing. And again, I would have continued merrily on my way treating this for, this crazy woman. But when I had a name for it, okay, let's go ahead and move them into the trauma model. And all of a sudden,
Hmm.
magic things start happening. So it was that was how Kevin Leapley was the name of the therapist. He's actually now even across the hall from me, and we do a lot of work together with couples. Um, but that was probably a really long way of explaining how I got into this incredibly strange field. Strange, not strange, because again, it impacts so many people, but it's just strange because nobody's
Hmm.
heard of it.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I
Mhm.
think people don't really talk about. Now, I know, Pete, you're using for your PhD research, you're working specifically with trauma, right?
Yes, but my niche is more into the growth post trauma. So I study
Oh,
post traumatic growth.
I love post-traumatic growth. Full conversation.
But I was interested in when you said it's controversial to call it an addiction. So my I have a master's in education that emphasized applied behavior analysis, and so my final paper was a analysis of a certain case of internet-based sex addiction. And applied behavior analysis, they kind of pigeonholed themselves into treating autism, autism spectrum disorder. So for me to say I want to treat sexual addiction was like I had to get special permission from teachers and whatever. But I remember when I was applying to social work master's degrees, I had someone say, "Well, I read your final paper for this degree, and you call it an addiction. That's interesting. Why would you call it that? It's a compulsion. It's not an addiction." So I had to justify why behaviorally I defined this internet based sexual behavior as an addiction. And it's really cut and dry in behavior analysis. I'm just like, well, here's the definition, and it fits the definition. That's why I call it an addiction. But I remember he kind of went back and forth with me on it, like you can't call it that. I'm like,
It's not in
okay,
the DSM. I'm like, well, neither was
yeah,
PTSD until you put it there.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's very
exactly.
fair. So I guess then why for you, Latina, would that be controversial to say sex addiction?
It's not controversial from my perspective. Like Pete, I've overlaid addiction and compulsive behaviors, like again, just because it does have an ICD-9 code or 11 code. The World Health
Are we on
Organization
11
does.
already?
Yes, we are.
Wow.
And the World Health Organization recognizes it, but like Pete was saying, they classify it under compulsive behavioral disorders as opposed to addiction. When I overlay those, regardless of what the addiction is, like we can, they look the same. The
Yeah.
difference is I'm not putting a chemical into my body, but when I'm taking in through my eyes or other senses, again, when we look at other things like gambling, um, it's altering the chemistry in my brain and my body. So that's where it becomes, and they actually have classified gambling as an addiction now. So I'm like, why can gambling be addiction, but video gaming isn't yet, and we can't call sex addiction an addiction? And it becomes, so it's not controversial to me. The other thing that can be hard about it is you have a group of people who don't want to be called addicts, and I understand, and I don't really care what you call it. But then there's also a group of people, and this one is really interesting, but I see it a lot, is the people around, so the sexually acting out people kind of often learn to like the label of addiction, because then they can move into recovery, and then they have relapses, and I didn't want to, but I have an addiction, so I'm going to. And their partners, meanwhile, back at the ranch, are saying, I don't care. You're not allowed to do the thing, but I had a relapse and I have an addiction, so we have relapses and addiction. And it's hard because it's all true, and it becomes problematic language. So again, I was like, whatever you want to call it, it's causing problems in your life. Let's not do it anymore. And I know it's impulsive, it's compulsive, and you claim you don't want to be doing it, and you can't stop, right? When we go back to, like Pete was saying, his addiction model, I make attempts to stop and I can't, and I am ruining my life with it, but that doesn't matter. I'm doing it anyway. And
so for you, it's just a matter of semantics, like how you're going to diagnose
semantics.
it to put in paperwork. That's the only thing that matters.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't call it whatever we want, whatever somebody needs it to be coded as.
I've seen that though in all sorts of diagnoses. When you put a name to something, it helps some people, and they're like, "Oh, that's why," and they want to know why. Why am I sad all the time? It's because you have clinical depression. Like, I do? Oh my goodness. And I've seen that happen with guys who are struggling with alcoholism, and you say you have this thing, and they take it and they're like, okay, here's the problem. They put boundaries around it, and they can say, I need to work on this little thing that's over here. Whereas other people, you give them a diagnosis, you name it, and they don't put boundaries around it. Now it is their whole person. And they're like, oh, I am an addict. It's not I have an addiction that needs to be contained. It's I am.
Yes.
I am that thing. And that's a problem for any kind of diagnosis if somebody takes it on as a personality trait.
Well, even diabetes, for example, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. Like I said, I have a niece who I love and I'm very close to, and it drives me crazy when she's referred to as a diabetic. I'm like, she is a person with diabetes, and so she manages it. But again, there are people that, again, with any diagnosis of any kind, they take it on as their personality. And so with this, like anything else, it's a matter of, how do I figure out who I am? And there's this thing that impacts me. This may be total. Are y'all familiar with Venom? This anti-superhero.
Heck yeah, I am.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's my favorite.
Okay, so for me, I have a husband and 3 adolescent. Well, not even adolescent. My son is now 20. That's for Taylor.
Oh my gosh!
What the heck? I know, right? He knows him.
Whoa.
But so Marvel is a thing in my house. I'm not a huge, I don't watch a lot of anything, but the Venom character, I think, describes addiction, especially when I'm talking about sexual addiction. I use this with people and they're like, that's it, right? It's this thing. I am me, and I may not be a perfect person or whatever, but this thing sits here and all of a sudden it comes in and takes over. And it makes me do things that I actually really don't want to do. But at the time I'm doing them, I think I do. And then after, it pulls out. And I've seen it for about 10 minutes. So please forgive me if I'm getting this totally wrong. But when I saw it, I was like, that's what addiction is right there.
We know the internet is famously very, very compassionate to people who get superhero character information wrong. So you just keep going.
Okay, I hope so. But again, it's just that idea that they're left going, again, the shame cycle starts, right? I can't believe I did this. I hate myself. I feel terrible. And it's so hard because I have so much compassion for them, as well as for the other people that are being left in the wake of this Venom disaster, which are their partners, because that form of addiction hits specifically your intimate partner very personally in a way that other addictions don't.
It's one of the questions I actually have about when it comes to physical intimacy. Why is it why is it so powerful? When I talk to clients, I mean, I try to understand this, why sex is a thing where you have some part of culture that just says sex is a fun pastime, and you go and you do it and you whatever, and you never see the person again, and it just feels good. And then you have people who stay together, and like, how could you ever do anything with anybody unless you really felt strongly towards them? So, and honestly, I personally, I believe that there's no such thing as strings attached. I don't think that that's a real thing. That's what people say to
What do you mean?
themselves. It's like you can't engage in that level of physical intimacy without something happening emotionally.
Oh, you mean no strings attached?
Yes, no strings attached.
Okay.
I don't think that's a real thing. So in any case, I keep wondering why, and I would, from what I hear from clients, it's because they're so vulnerable. It's like there's no way to get closer to somebody. You can't get physically, emotionally, like vulnerability closer than sex. That's what I've come to understand. But I'm interested to hear why do you think that it is so hurtful to the intimate partner, as you said? Why can't they just say, well, having sex with someone else is just, that's like playing tennis.
Yeah, that's a really good and loaded question. And so I don't know, I know you guys are research buffs too. So my head starts popping into, let's bring up John
Well,
Gottman. Let's
Pete is a research buff. Let's be really
I'm a
clear
research
here.
buff.
I am like not opposed to research, but that is not my bag, baby.
No, but Taylor is starting to come around. So any research you can hit us with.
throw out. And so for the sake of not being obnoxious, I'll just throw out some names and y'all can, and people can dive into them as they would like to. But I think you're absolutely right, Pete. It is that incredible vulnerability. Are you all familiar with the intimacy pyramid
I
at
am
all?
not.
Have
No.
you looked at it?
No.
Okay. So it's a pyramid, and on the very, very top of it sits intimacy. Right. And I would say if we were to break that little top pyramid, we could even, physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, and put sexual intimacy at the very top of it. Under that sits vulnerability, meaning I can't be intimate unless I can be vulnerable with you. Right. That the
Mhm.
physical intimacy, I mean, I got to be willing to take my clothes off in front of you. And
Yeah.
that is not a small thing. Okay. Under that sits trust. And so I have to be able to trust you. That's not the bottom, though. Under trust sits safety, and under safety sits truth.
Hmm.
And so
Ooh,
truth
interesting.
or honesty is the absolute fundamental piece of relationship. Now, some people, I never get truth from you, and so I'm never going to move into safety and trust and right. So I'm never that this is true in any relationship. But the fact that when I'm in a place where I need to understand the good, the bad, the ugly, people, you've heard the saying, friend is someone who knows everything about you and likes you anyway. Right. And I think about with my husband and I have been married for more than 20 years, and we've seen a lot of each other. Right. And so much of it is I need to know that I can trust you because I know the truth of who you are. And sometimes I don't like it, but when you give me truth, I can choose for myself what I'm going to do with it.
Hmm.
If you lie to me and present it as truth, the term I use is informed consent. And, we talk about it in terms of, I used to work in sexual assault, which is why, again, I don't flinch when I say the word sex or any other form of it, because I talk about this stuff yes, I have conversations with men about how often they masturbate and what that
Hmm.
looks like. And yeah, this is just my life. Um,
Pete laughed. Haha, Pete.
But I'm
didn't
muted.
laugh.
I'm muted. Dang it, Taylor.
But again, that concept of it doesn't really matter what the truth is. If I can choose for myself based on what the information is, I have my own power. And even if I don't like it, I can still feel safe with you because I know you're going to tell me what's up. So I can trust you. So I can be vulnerable. I can choose my vulnerability, and I can choose intimacy with you.
I
So
think that kind of hits on something that is so important in couples counseling, right? Which is that like I don't want to have this conversation with this person. I'm afraid of the implications of this conversation. And like, I push really hard all the time. Like, you need to tell them these things, because if you don't, there's no way you can move forward. And if you feel like you're too scared to have that conversation, That's the conversation you need to have. I have things I want to talk to you about, but I'm too scared to talk to you about it. That is a truth. We need to address this truth. Yeah. So
So I'm
No, that's
wondering,
beautifully said.
in this intimacy pyramid, then truth is the very bottom. I imagine it's the widest part of the pyramid.
Hmm.
Does that mean it has like the largest mass of information input, like every day in and out of like, is that true? Is it not true? So from your partner, you're getting a lot of truth or falsehood input back and forth, back and forth. But as you go
Correct.
up the pyramid, when it comes to like vulnerability, that type of stuff may happen once a day, maybe
Yes.
a few times a week.
Right.
Okay, so maybe
Right. And
that's
then,
so you could probably lie about something to your significant other for whatever good reason you believe it is, but you could lie, but there's so much mass of information when it comes to the truth that they can overlook a lie because they have so much more that they bank on.
no,
I'm not
people
encouraging
don't,
lying, but what I'm saying is like
no.
why I'm wondering why stuff at the top of the pyramid is so much more painful. Maybe because there's less of it.
Well, there is less of it. And because I banked on everything else. Basically, I allowed myself to become vulnerable and intimate with you based on the foundation. So, which is why, are y'all familiar with the term gaslighting, which has been way misused? It kind of makes me mad. I'm like, hey, that's our term.
we have a very strong feeling about that, but yes, we are familiar with it.
Yeah, I
Um,
learned it from TikTok.
yeah. So I'm like, my dog was gaslighting me because it said it wanted to go outside and it didn't. And I'm like, that's not
Uh,
gaslighting. Gaslighting is, again, or people, I'm going to make somebody mad here. You can't gaslight yourself. It's impossible because gaslighting is it's based on the movie Gaslight. Have y'all seen it?
mhm.
Yeah,
Every
I have.
therapist should see Gaslight. Again, it's intentional manipulation, skewing your reality for my benefit. And so, again, when we talk about not, if I just forgot to tell my husband something, that's, or I didn't think you'd care. And so I didn't think to mention it. I kind of blew it off. That's not the same thing. Now, certainly there was truth that was missed there. But yes, that, to Pete's point, that kind of truth can be overlooked and argued, and we can talk about that. But if you deliberately manipulate, and Pete, I'm not ignoring your question from earlier. If you deliberately manipulate facts or information for your benefit and to my detriment, how do I manage that? How do I become vulnerable or intimate with someone who is willing to do something that cruel? And I'm going to use the word cruel because it is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is I think about a lot of the men I've spoken with who would never, ever begin to conceptualize it in the way you just said it. Like, yeah, I told you a little white lie, but what's the big deal? I did it just to make things run smoother. And you're saying that this isn't a question of the truth. I need truth because truth is a thing. This is a question of you are withholding information to get what you want at my expense.
Yes.
That's what the problem is. And I think a lot of men I've spoken with at least have been like, well, what's the big deal? That's the big deal.
And so when we go to the concept of specific sexual and physical intimacy, we're compounding this because for lots of reasons. And I would love for y'all to chime in because you're both therapists and we both work with this too. But probably neither of you have ever heard of Dr. Omar Manwala.
Mm-mm.
He he's not popular because he actually uses sexual acting out. He uses the term abuse, which, I mean, probably for both of you that like right back in your chair.
Mhm.
Is compulsive pornography use abusive? Well, that means that everybody's abusive. And my argument would be if there's informed consent on the other side, not necessarily, but if you're telling your partner that's not what you're doing, but you're staying at work late so that you can do that, and she's having to try to get the kids fed into soccer so that you can stay at work and do that, come back, and now you're not sexually interested in her and you're grouchy, because by the way, that's what happens. Um, that sure does sound like it fits the definition. So all of that said, Dr. Manwala is not popular in a lot of circles because he uses the word abuse and he uses the term entitlement, which a lot of people don't like either when he's talking about compulsive sexual behaviors. Um,
Hmm.
but he talks about this thing that he refers to as the triadic core, and this is to Pete's question from earlier. These, as his research, he says that there are basically three things when you look at men and women. Interestingly, Brene Brown, in, is it, I'm trying to remember which book it was, Gifts of Imperfection, maybe, or daring greatly. She talks about kind of the same thing. I'm like, you both independently came to the same information from totally different research. It's funny how that works. But if you, where we are hit the hardest is when we talk to someone about, specifically with women, but also with men, about their gender, their physical being, which is tied into gender, but they're slightly different, and their sexuality. And these three things, if you could think about those three things intersect. And so, like, if we were to Venn diagram this, my gender, my sexuality, and my oh wait, did I say gender, sexuality, body, and paternity? That was that third piece. So I misspoke on that. Paternity, yes, like your mother, being a mother, being a father, your fitness to be a parent. If you think about where we hit people, that really, really hurts. Now with men, also we bring in that concept of their financial fitness as well, like how much money you make. But that concept of the triadic core is these three parts of us seem to be where we are most deeply vulnerable and can be wounded. And so those three things, they overlay, right? My gender, my sexuality, and was also, and my body, and paternity fits into that. All three of those things are connected. Mm-hmm. Again, John Gottman does great work about this on this as well. Are y'all familiar with John Gottman?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because he's the god of work. But he talks about what sexual betrayal, it hits where it hurts the most. Because he also talks about this concept, and this is one of the key things I think is so important that we remember. And he says it way better than I'm about to. But he says, when we enter a committed relationship with someone, basically, our bodies are always ours. So we always can say yes or no, right? Consent. I'm a huge believer in not assent, but consent. And even my little poor son got lectured his whole life, along with my daughters, that it's not no means no, it's yes means yes. But the concept...
Say that again one more time. Just really want to focus
for the
on
people
that.
In the back.
For the people in the back who didn't hear that one.
It is not no means no, it's yes means yes.
And that is so much, when I hear that, it makes me happy because of what it means for my sexual behavior. Like if it's not, I'm waiting for no to be shut down. It's like both of us are saying yes together. It's like a celebration almost, instead of like this tentative, this trepidatious.
You didn't say no. Here
asking.
We go. Whee!
Yeah, exactly. You didn't say no, so I guess we're all good. But this yes means yes. It's like, wow, this is it's fun and it's happy, and I love you and you love me, and it was like, it's so much better. It just feels different.
I'm all in
when you say that.
Yeah, it does. And we're both all in.
Mm-hmm.
And building on that, he is specifically in committed, specifically monogamous, but really even not monogamous relationships. I know there's lots of variations of polyandry and things. But in any committed relationship, my yes is, I'm taking my sexuality, again, my body remains mine. I can always consent, but I'm taking my sexuality and I'm giving it to you. And you're giving yours to me. And so now I hold something that is incredibly sacred from you, and you do from me, right? So I believe that all of the other parts of me are shared all around even with my children, right? I mean, we all have kids. They crawl all over us. Other people's children. I work with little kids at church. They crawl all over you, right? So there aren't very many there really aren't other parts of me that aren't to some extent shared with the rest of the world, except not this. This is exclusively yours. Yes. I love IFS. But this part of me is specifically for you. And for me, right? Obviously, sexuality should be something that we enjoy, but I'm handing it to you and you're handing yours to me. So when you go outside of this relationship, whether it's with pornography I don't know about, or you're hiring prostitutes, or you're even flirting sexually with people at work, you're taking something that belongs to me and giving it away without my consent.
This brings up a question I've always kind of want to talk to someone about. Well, let me rephrase that. I have my own thoughts about this. I'm not my question is sex actually a need? I have a very unpopular opinion, which is I don't think sex is a need. I think it addresses needs, but the sex itself is not the need. if that makes sense. However, Latina, you are a specialist in this. I'm curious your take on if you think sex is actually a need or if it's something else, or if that's even the wrong question.
You want to chime in on this first?
What do you think, Pete?
Oh man.
I didn't mean to do that to you. You don't have to.
No, that's all right. Actually, I think I'm the one who wrote the question, so it's I think Taylor and I talked about it, so I wrote it down, and so I deserve it. Is it a need? I would then ask what type of need are we talking about? Physical needs, then, and emotional needs. Are we talking about mental health needs? And when it comes to physical need, I know there are a bunch of guys, especially as I went through high school, who believe and want to believe, honestly, they want to believe that it is a need, that it's an uncontrollable urge. And as I grow up,
then what does that mean?
If it's a need, that means that you will die if you do not have it.
So you are entitled to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a human right.
Bingo.
That's right.
Yeah, which is what has always bothered me about it, because we're talking about communion, really. I mean, you're talking about a sexual act is two people choosing to come together in a very vulnerable, emotionally gratifying, scary, beautiful, thrilling way. The idea that people owe you sex, or that your need for sex, very heavy air quotations here, is something that must be fulfilled. And if someone can't help you fulfill that, they are failing you. That bothers me a lot. It really bothers me a lot. Again, I think that it fulfills real needs. I think everyone needs touch in their life, for example. I think everyone needs closeness and intimacy. I think that sex is a really great way to meet those needs, but the need being met is not sex.
Correct. I agree. Yeah. And you think about, Carl Rogers talks about empathy, for example, in terms of global empathy. What does the world need? Like, what would anyone understand is good or bad, or feel? What would the general public feel is something worthy of empathy, or how would people feel in general if something happened? And then there's personal empathy, which is how would that person feel in that situation. And I feel like the concept of needs falls, specifically around sexuality, falls into that same category. Is, does the world need sex? Yes, pretty much, because that's how the world is peopled, right? We're all walking around here, for the most part, we are the result of sex of some form or another, right? Is it needed in the world? Absolutely. But does it fall into the same category as food and water and sleep? According to Carl, again, it is on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but so is self-actualization, and how many people actually get there.
I've been there for years. It's the best. Anyway, keep on.
I admit that as you talk about being a research nerd, I did look into the history of our understanding of sexual compulsivity and as a disorder. So there was a literature review that was done in 2014, and it went back into the 1700s, and it talked about nymphomania. This is the definition of nymphomania, even that was up until the 1980s. One, premarital, this is for a female who has sexual compulsivity. Premarital intercourse, erotic fantasies, seductiveness, obscene language, and orgasmic excitement. That's what they classified as a disorder. And that just shocked me. That's everybody. Yeah. That's like, if you have sex before you're married, you have sexual fantasies, and you flirt. And you can orgasm. That defines you as a nymphomaniac. And they had horrendous actual physical surgeries that were going on in the 80s to help cure women of nymphomania, as they saw it. And our lives are, and in the 1700s, it was even more abstract than that. Like, how do you talk about stimulation of nerves that was unhealthy or something like that?
And just to jump in real quick, not to cut you off, but to add on top of this, I think about the Victorian era's approach to sex in a popular sense as it's this bad, terrible thing, and how that's played out in certainly older generations where sex is this, we don't talk about that, very clutch the pearls.
And that's the problem. And it's not to say that hypersexuality doesn't occur and that it's not a problem. If you have hypersexuality, and it's a problem in your life, that's legitimate. But our understanding of hypersexuality has been so muddied by social context and like our conservative restraint, even in science. In 2015, a literature review, 2015, this is their results, what they said. Although discussed in the psychological literature for years, compulsive sexual behavior continues to defy easy categorization within mental health. Further research needs to be completed to understand where compulsive sexual behavior falls within the psychiatric nosology or understanding. That's 2015. And I think it's still a dark and creepy thing that makes people giggle and they don't want to talk about it.
You're right. And so Patrick Carnes, I don't know if you're familiar with that, if you ran across anything in that literature review, I'm sure he popped up somewhere. He's kind of the grandfather of the idea of sexual addiction. And again, whatever we want to call it, problematic sexual behavior and compulsivity, right? And so when we talk about it, it does get, that's where it becomes so muddy, right? So many people, I've talked to young men that are, 22-year-olds that come into my office because they think there's something wrong with them because they really like looking at porn. I am not a proponent of porn, by the way. I've worked with people that have been creators. I've worked with prostitutes. This is not something that they live their lives wanting to do. So it is not a good thing, not just for the person viewing it. It skews your arousal template. That was a term coined by Patrick Carnes. There's a lot of problems with it, not the least of which is the people making it. The vast, vast majority are not doing it because this is what they wanted to do on their Thursday night. They're either trafficked, they're being exploited, they might need money. And so this is, I worked with an amazing woman who for years did work as an escort because husband left her for someone much younger, trying to figure out how to feed her 2 young children, lost her job. Through nefarious acts of other people, right? It was just really bad. And so, but this wasn't something that she's like, you know what I want to do. It was, so again, that idea that people go watch Les Mis, just kidding. But it's not something that is,
no kidding.
That anyway, so all that was my little tirade about, again, I'm that said, we understand that a 22-year-old unmarried guy who comes in and says, I really like looking at porn. At the end of the day, when I'm tired and I'm exhausted and that's what my brain tells me to do. I'm like, okay, it doesn't mean you're an addict. Certainly doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means that your brain and body are working exactly like they should, but it's an illegitimate attempt to meet a legitimate need. So
I have such strong feelings about this. And specifically for what you're saying, the number of times I've met with a man in my office who said I'm addicted to porn. I'm like, okay, well, when you say that, what do you mean? Like, 2 or 3 times a week, I'll get the urge to look at porn, and I do. Okay, so how are you addicted, though? Well, I can't seem to not do it. Okay, but how are you addicted, right? Like, there's this, like, people have, certainly in more conservative cultures, and particularly in very strong religious communities, pornography has become this, like, boogeyman of, like, and my mother-in-law doesn't listen to this.
We're not advocating for it.
Not advocating for it. Just so we're very clear. I do not advocate for pornography usage. I don't appreciate it. I don't approve it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. My mother-in-law told me one time that pornography is the worst thing that can happen to a marriage. And she meant it with her whole heart. And I was like, so you're telling me you would rather a husband be molesting their children than looking at pornography? You would rather find out that, like, a mom is stealing medication and, like, doing heroin and, like, taking money away that could be going to the kids for food? Like, that's preferable to someone in the household looking at pornography? Oh, it kills me. Pornography is not good. That's my stance. Pornography is not good. Pornography is taking something that is, like, built into our bodies and hardwired and just, like, revving it up to an unhealthy, sometimes an extremely unhealthy, but, like, it's taking something that exists as a normal, healthy thing and making it do what it's supposed to do in normal, healthy circumstances in what I think is an unhealthy way. But again, I don't look at it and go, oh my gosh, you're a monster. It's
but
like,
it is seen as a moral failing. I think other sorts of addictions that are called addictions, like alcoholism, you can say he struggles with alcoholism, and people will say that, and it's not. It's like, oh my gosh, he got caught up in that mess. That's really unfortunate. But pornography usage is seen as like, well, why? Why would you do that? What kind of person are you? That kind of question follows pornography usage. I was
Yep.
I was a facilitator for an addiction recovery group, and it was like a 12-step group for people struggling with compulsive addiction stuff. And one guy came in, and he was addicted to food, and he did get the feeling that like, why are you here? And it was really unfortunate. Like we try to stem that kind of attitude, but it was like he's like, you guys can stop. You guys can totally kill that part and not ever do that. But me, I approach food every single day, and I have to eat. And he would eat until he was sick every single time because it made him feel good. But there wasn't the same kind of like moral failing of
Right.
like, you use food, you're a horrible person.
And I use that a lot when we are talking about sexuality too. I actually talk a lot about the disordered eating or eating disorders, and they're different things, but kind of in that same context. And coming back to that, is sex a need? Um, no, is the short answer. Not to a specific person at a specific time. Again, I'm telling you, I always ask people the question. So you're telling me if your husband became paralyzed from the waist down, that you would have to go have sex with somebody else, and so you would leave that marriage? Is that what you're telling me? And again, with husbands as well with their wives, and they're like, well, no, that would be terrible. Like, but if it's a need, then you're telling me that you have no choice, right? Because like I would have to eat at some point, I would have to consume water, I would have to sleep, I would die if I didn't sleep. So that's our baseline for need. That said, one of the hard things about sexuality is that, like eating, it is part of our life. And so when we've manipulated our minds around it, like that compulsivity, because we really do change our wiring around sexuality, when we engage in things. And this is where I'm like, I overlay that addiction model. I'm like, it escalates over time. So what used to repulse me, where I started and I would never dare do that thing, now I'm doing it. Now I'm watching it. Now I'm participating in it. I would I've never, fill in the blank. And I'm always cautious about being too graphic. And but I will tell you that there is very, very little that I haven't heard at this point.
Sure.
And so, but when I watch that, one of the things that we do, I'm doing one on Monday. It's called a full therapeutic disclosure, where we are giving again that their partner the gift of all the truth of what they've done.
Ooh,
Um, and oh, it's awful.
heavy.
It
Wow.
is an awful experience for both parties, but it
So
really does.
necessary.
It
So
is, and
nice.
I
Yeah.
call it the funeral for the relationship, right? This is it's they've known that this horrible thing has been happening for a long time. The partner gets to ask questions, not in that setting, but they submit the questions ahead of time so they can the acting out partner can sit with it with their therapist and give a true, honest answer. But what I see over time, 100%, and I've never seen an exception to this, is the escalation, right? And it started here. I made excuses. I wanted to keep doing it. And after a while, it became so compulsive and so routine that I didn't know how I would live without it. And it became such an important part of my life that I had to keep it so secret. I had to lock down. I've opened bank accounts. I get burner phones. It's kind of insane. And when they sit and talk about this, and we're not talking about like sleazy, my clients are attorneys and doctors and professional athletes. And I mean like World
Successful
Series
people
kind of
with a lot of
professional
discipline and the
athletes.
other way. Yeah.
Yeah, these are people that, I mean, it's just insane. And but they're sitting there. One of the hardest for me was this big giant man, professional athlete, huge human being. And he's sitting on my couch sobbing, saying, I don't know how, I can't, like, please, please, please don't take it away from me. Like I can give up. And he's listing all these other things that he can give up, but I don't know how I would live if you took this away from me. And
Hmm.
it was so pathetic. And but by pathetic, I mean that in a compassionate way. Like, you just want to
It's
go
just
over
so
there and
sad to
hug him.
watch. Yeah.
So it is. I'm like, so
Yeah.
yeah, this is not a path that these people want to be on, right? Which is why and they want real attachment, but now it's hard to have normal relationships with anybody, because you know what they don't talk about is that now I am sexualizing every man, woman, and frankly child that I run across, because my arousal
Hmm.
template has been so skewed and so altered, and they hate this about themselves. They hate that they can't go to Lubbock without knowing where every single massage parlor in that city is,
Mm-hmm.
and along the way. And then so again, when they stop and we're asking them, how much time have you spent with it? How much? And when they look at the hours, right? I go to work 2 hours early so I can be there alone. I take long lunches. I stay at work late. I missed my kid's soccer tournament. I I was so dysregulated at my grandfather's funeral that I jetted out of there early so I could go get this mead. And you guys can't see me air quoting
Mm-hmm.
this. I needed to regulate. And so I'm using it like people use alcohol to regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of going to my partner, my spouse, and, falling on her shoulder and crying, which is what I should do. It's what I want to do, but I
Yes.
can't let myself
Oh
do
man.
it.
There
The
was
isolationism that like leads to a lack of vulnerability that's the real death knell that this brings in. It's not about it's not about the orgasm. It's not about being attracted to naked people. It's not about liking to watch people have sex. It's the isolationism that leads to a complete disconnect and no vulnerability, no truth because of the shame. That's the problem. Capital
the
P
problem.
problem. That's the problem.
It's so sad.
I've
And
been
then it's
reading
sad for the partners.
Yeah.
I've been talking to Taylor about Nietzsche, the philosopher, recently, but he said men desire the desire, not the object of desire.
Yes.
And so you're talking about this large man who says, "Please don't take that from me." It was like, yeah, because you want to want something. It's not necessarily the thing itself; it's the want. You want the desire. And great news, you can keep it. You can keep that desire.
Right.
There's another guy who wrote in The Power of Concentration. Men are usually actively keeping themselves from the thing they want most. And that I had to shut the book after reading that because I realized that I do things trying to get something that is sabotaging what I'm trying to get.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will stay late at school trying to write a paper and end up writing a crap paper because I really, really want to do well. Well, you know what? Doing well means a whole lot of things, and you're actively keeping yourself from what you want the most. And in this case, what do you want? What do you want? And they're like, well, I want porn. No. Taylor just said you want intimacy, and you are actively keeping yourself from the thing that you want the most because you want to desire something, and you're pointing the ship at the wrong lighthouse.
I love that. I'm stealing that, by the way.
You thief.
No,
I think it gets
you're
an interesting
welcome.
question of power too, right? Like I talk to a lot of men about like, what do you like about pornography? Like, well, I like, they list the thing they're looking at. Like, no. Like, let's be really honest with each other here. Pornography is something you can completely control. You can have a thing and you can make it that thing explicitly exactly how you want it. You're in control of it. I mean, you can talk about this with like eating disorders as well, or various other compulsive behaviors. It's a question at some level in a very big way of control. How do I control my access to this? How do I control my experience of this? And I don't have control over anything in my life, but I can control this. You're asking me to give up that control? No, thank you.
Well, and that's even beyond, even with affairs, for example, right? It feels like I do have control over that because I can end this at any time and I can go cherry pick, right? And we're not talking about our child's grades or whether or not the lawnmower works or right. I'm cherry picking experiences that I get to have over here. So it feels thrilling if I'm hiring prostitutes or lots
Maybe
of any other area. Basically, I'm able to control it. And because I believe in entitlement, I believe I can. And so and it's okay as long as the other person, my partner, doesn't find out. Because they'll keep me from the thing that matters most to me, which they have decided is the sexual experience.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about what can make for bad sex. And I'm not talking about unpleasant sexual experiences. I'm talking about sex, a bad thing in a person's life. I would love to know, Latina, with all of your experience, what are the things that you think make sex good? What are the things that turn it into something healthy? How does a person enter into a sexual relationship or approach sex in a way that is what you feel it's supposed to be?
That is such a good question. And I the answer is not a monogamous relationship.
Hmm.
So
You heard it here first. Latina thinks that you shouldn't be in monogamous relationships.
I think that is a vital component. But right, it's that attunement. So if we start at the bottom of that intimacy pyramid, right, I'm being honest. I am bearing my belly to you in all areas of
Quite
my life.
literally.
Yep. And once you've had twins and a C-section, let me tell you, that's a thing.
Oh my gosh.
I have twins, sorry.
And twins.
Yes. So it's a terrible joke. So women probably think that's way funnier than men ever will. But
And I want to jump in real quick and say, by the way, as a husband who married, and Pete can maybe talk to this too, as a husband of a woman who has had 2 children and her body definitely changed. All the changes, I love them so much because they're proof of what we've gone through. She carried 2 children and they exist because of the work that she did, the work her body did, and like the stretch marks and the flabs and the I love it so much because it's
why
her.
is that, Taylor? It's her, and what is and you say that means something, right?
It's proof of what we've gone through together. It's the proof of our relationship. It's a reminder of the life that we built together. And I think that men and women both have to sacrifice to make relationships work, and men and women both have to sacrifice to make parenthood work. And the sacrifice that women make for it by default includes a physical component. And if, granted, that's if you're able to conceive and carry to term and all these things. But for me and my wife, the way I look at her is it's like a shrine to the power. It's like she made life. I was there. I helped in the process, but she did the heavy lifting. And the idea of, I don't know. I love it. I kind of think it's hot. Not in like, I look at like flabby bellies that have had babies. I'm like, oh, look at those stretch marks. Ooh. But with my wife specifically and explicitly, I love it because it's part of her and it tells me the story that we're sharing together. I love it. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, that describes what healthy sexuality, and a huge part of what sexuality
Yay!
is,
Got
right?
an A+, Taylor. You got the answer right.
Nailed it.
But I mean, is he wrong, Pete? You're a therapist.
Well, it reminds me of something my brother said. I was talking about, it was before I was married and he had been married for 4 or 5 years. He's my older brother. And I said like, so you always go for like this type of woman, and talking about his wife, her body type. And he goes, well, it's more like my preference has changed over the last 5 years. And now everything that she is, I start to prefer that.
Yes.
Super
like, yes.
Oh,
awesome.
That's really interesting.
It's one of those things where like, if I'm out in public, I can acknowledge a beautiful woman and I can acknowledge, that I am still a human being. Totally. Right. Like you see a good looking person and you catalog them as you are hot. You got nice parts of your body that my eye is drawn to. And I can recognize that as a beautiful thing without being like, oh, I wonder what it looks like.
Right. Well, your brain
having said that,
there.
Yeah, my brain stops there. Right. But I think about like, if I sometimes like, what would I do if this woman hit on me? Because men are stupid and like to think about things like that. And every time I get like this strong feeling of like, oh, but she's not my wife. Why would I ever want like the setting aside like pure physicality, the idea that I would risk the relationship I have with the woman who has made every single one of my dreams come true, the woman who I can look at in the morning and smile, who knows all of our inside jokes, who can make me so mad sometimes and who can make me laugh harder than anybody. The idea that I would risk any of that because someone has a nice butt is ridiculous to me, because they're not my wife. Therefore, they're not what I want. My wife, everything about her, all the everything, that's what I want. And if you are not that, please, no, thank you.
Well, I hate to represent all men with dirty thoughts, but in those guys who have dirty thoughts and they don't go into the logical space of why would I risk all that, there is this sexual rush that comes up when you say there's an attractive woman, you feel a rush and your thoughts go there. There is, with the guys that I've worked with who struggle with addiction, not necessarily addiction, but compulsive stuff, there's an immediate sense of guilt that comes with that. You cannot recognize an attractive woman. You cannot have a sexual fantasy about that woman without immediately crashing down into, I'm a horrible person. Why would I do that? You're going from attractive woman, sexual attraction to, oh, what would that mean? And like, what does that mean in my life? And would I or wouldn't I? And how would I act and whatever? And that sounds like there's no shame associated with any of that.
I am shameless. It's true.
Taylor is shameless. And if you do have shame, then it makes it worse, because then you're like, well, I guess I'm that type of person.
I have the best chart in my office, and I'm not in my office. I would hold it up for you but it talks about that concept of the shame cycle and how, again, thought comes, it's what do I do with it? And so part of this is where I go to, call it whatever you want. We use the addiction model, and that's how we treat. And again, I'm talking, I work primarily with women on the addiction side with women. It's the same for them. So we go, it's a really valid question. So what do I do? So we come to, we kind of got to backtrack a little bit and say, if I'm going there, why? Where did I learn that? What is it? What need is that meeting? And so again, I was talking about sobriety is the first step, was we stop it, right? That's where we have to, you start reciting the Gettysburg Address or something like that, because you need to learn, you notice the thought. Well, it's just the way it is, right? It's like
Yep.
my brain has to go somewhere else. It's just the
But
way
urges are
behavioral.
signals, not commands.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I actually talk about, football flags on the field all the time. It's my flag on the field that says stop, right? Instead of when I notice it, now you're not going to get it perfect the first time. And then you're going to realize you did it, and then you're going to feel shame. Oh, if I had stopped it up here, right? Then I can, next time I have the thought, I start going there. Wait, stop, flag on the field, pause, which I always say that's what the flags are, right? It says pause and let's review.
This is something I do with a lot of my clients that kind of is along this lines that I found a lot of success with. And I'm nervous because if I say this and Latina goes, that's dumb, then I've made myself look stupid in front of a professional.
Do it. Come on, Taylor, do it. I want to hear it.
Better
Here we
words.
go. You use a better word. That is maladaptive. So what I do is I'll work with men who are like, I can't stop looking at pornography. I can't stop insert whatever. Okay, do you want to look at pornography? And they'll say, well, sometimes yes, most of the time no. And so I try and go, okay, well, you're allowed to not do it if you don't want to. And I think that people will get into like this pattern of, I've gone down the first two steps, I have to see this all the way through.
Yes.
At any point in time, you're allowed to say, I don't actually want this, so I'm going to stop. I really don't want to trivialize that. And I don't want to make it sound like, well, if you just choose not to do it, but do. That's not how it works necessarily. However, what Latina is talking about is taking that pause and giving yourself time to really question, is this what I want? And if it's not what I want, I actually am fully allowed to stop. I don't have to start a process and then finish it all the way. I can stop and just, I already have gone further than I would normally want to, or further than I think I do want to. I can just stop here. I don't need to finish this out because I'm already like ruined by what I've done.
Now, if you're hit with a bunch of shame, then you don't go back and analyze it. You're just in the pit of despair.
The pit of despair.
So we teach,
all the time.
That was actually really funny. So we teach a lot of
We can tell the way
shame.
you laughed. It was really funny.
No, it was. I went Princess Bride.
Yes, that's where I went too. Yes, don't even think about trying to get out.
I love the Princess Bride, but
Yes.
we do a lot of shame resilience around this, and I know we kind of got away from what is healthy sexuality, but shame resilience is super important. One of the other things that I do, and if I can throw out material, best reading ever is called Going Deeper by Eddie Caparucci, and I can.
That's real dirty, Latina.
It's awesome. Yeah, it sounds really bad, but it's a great book. And I actually emailed him and said, could you write this? Just take out all the sexual addiction stuff, and because everybody can find themselves in this book. And so he actually did write it for betrayed partners and for women as well, who are dealing with sexually compulsive behaviors. But it talks about what you learned in your early life, how I deal with stress. Was I sent to my room in shame? Do I have shame? Was I ignored? Was there hypersexuality in my home? There's I think 10 different, like I'm looking around my desk right now because I have these books all over the place, but I don't have this one in front of me. But it is so good because it does help remove the shame, right? As people are reading through it, they're like, you find yourself in that book or in other materials and say, oh, okay, now again, that concept, I have this maladapted need that is trying to meet a legitimate need. This is how I've survived up to this point. This is, and by the way, you don't have to have had a horrible childhood for this to be the case, right? How many of you had a brother who was like the golden kid in the family, right? Nobody? Okay. Or you were the golden kid in the family, right? There's a lot of stress and pressure there. as
Freaking
well.
James.
And you can have,
A
yeah, okay,
Niber,
you said his name.
actually.
Yeah, I'm like, that was me. You can have fantastic parents, but emotionally, we all figured out how to deal with things in different ways. And for some people, they latched on to sexuality early and they went with it because, and most of the time it was secret, thus the shame, right? So that developed, that welled up inside of me. So now I know, which also, by the way, causes problems when we talk about what's healthy sexuality. It causes problems in healthy sexuality because you're like, oh no, I shouldn't, this plus this equals, so no, if I'm am I lusting after my wife, am I lusting after my husband? I don't think you can use that word if you're talking about somebody that you wholeheartedly love and
Hmm.
you're thinking, I'm actually really turned on right now, my arousal template is directed at them. That's how it's supposed to work. The world
Yeah.
must be peopled. But it's also right, so things get so skewed. So addressing that shame early on, we talk about sobriety, we address shame at the same time. This is not, it is really important that you understand that
It's
shame's not helping you.
it sounds like
Yeah.
shame shuts you down.
It
Going back
does.
to the
Well,
like most people are keeping themselves from what they want the most. I think like Taylor's saying you can give yourself permission to stop. Realize, but first you have to realize what you want. What are you trying to get? And
Mhm.
eventually you start heading towards getting yourself what you really desire.
and what do I
I think
do
this,
instead?
yes, this kind of gets around this idea of one of the, I think the most revolutionary things that therapy can bring into a person's life is for them to say, I fantasize about dressing up like little Bo Peep and having my wife be one of the sheep. And now I'm getting like all kinds of weird things. And to have you say that to somebody and have your therapist go, okay, and not like be disgusted or freak out or just,
Yeah.
I accept you as a person. This is a part of you and I accept this as part of you. It sounds like it doesn't work very well for you. Let's see if we can find a different way to do this.
Right.
That sentence alone, if we could just like inject that into people's veins, would change so much of what we do as a profession. I accept you for who you are. Let's find a different way to do this if this isn't working.
Which, by the way, is why I would say it's really good to see a therapist instead of talk to your best friend about things, which you can talk to your best friend. But I always
Sure.
make the joke that if you tell your friend that you want to shave your head, give away all your money, and join a Buddhist colony in Tibet, if I'm your best friend, you tell me that, I'm going to go, what? If you tell me that as a therapist, I'm like, okay, let's talk about that.
So as we start talking about this stuff, about what makes it healthy, what makes it unhealthy, it sounds like the difference between a healthy relationship with sex, both within yourself and with other people and outside of yourself, kind of comes down to a question of vulnerability and openness and a healthy understanding of shame. Is that, I don't know how to incorporate that idea. What
Sure.
would you say it needs to turn? What does a healthy relationship differentiate from an unhealthy relationship? The difference is,
The difference is attachment,
to what?
another person,
So
healthy attuned attachment.
I had someone tell me that the problem with pornography was that it was faceless sex. And
It is a problem.
he wasn't literal because you can see faces, but his perception of like there's no connection. It is faceless sex.
Absolutely. The number of times, like I tell clients this a lot, like the problem with pornography is not the sex, it's not the masturbation, it's not the orgasm, it's none of that. The problem is you're taking a communal activity and making it solely about yourself. That's the problem. And it can ruin relationships because you're cutting the other person out completely. They become a body. They become a way for you to get what you want. That's not a relationship. That's a tool. That's the utilization of a tool, and nobody wants to be a tool being utilized.
And you make your partner that, and this is an awful term, and I'm going to use it, and feel free to, edit this out if you need to. But I actually have heard more than one person use the term, even with your spouse, your wife, it becomes vaginal masturbation
Pretty much.
because you're using her. And nobody wants to be used, especially when I'm trying to attune or attach in this healthy way. Again, everything else in my world, I share.
Mm-hmm.
All the other parts of me I share, but this is specifically for you, and I gave it to you, and you gave yours to me, and this is supposed to be for us.
Mm-hmm.
And this makes our relationship distinctly different than every other relationship that either one of us has. And when you give this away, especially when I don't have knowledge of it, it's devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I think I have one final question. I realize we've already used up so much of your time, and I cannot thank you enough for being here, Latina.
Yes,
This
thank
has been
you.
a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you bet. Specifically for you, what are the biggest issues that you see in partners who have been cheated on, and how does one, if one even can, how does one recover from infidelity? I think you can personally, but
You can. You can. That's what I do all day long. So the biggest thing is working on self, and I apologize because I just had like massive thunder and lightning outside my house. So um, that's happening
how
right now.
dare you?
I know.
Yeah, get on it,
Um,
Latina.
this is going to sound so strange, but learning your own worth and doing work on yourself. I run women's groups. I run 2 different betrayed partners groups, and I'm very, very clear at the very beginning, and with all the work I do with my partners, is again, you have the right to information, to truth, right? Sits at the bottom of that pyramid. I will work with you to help you get it. We'll try to get answers for you, but the bottom line is there's no why that will ever make sense, because you can't make anybody rob a bank. I can't make anybody act outside their values. So for whatever reason, they stepped outside of their values, or you didn't know what their values were, right? But there's still no shame in that. So the work is on understanding myself and healing my view of self, and learning to trust myself, to trust my gut. Again, when we talk about gaslighting, it is pretty much impossible to be in a place where there's been infidelity of any kind in a relationship, even financial, any kind of infidelity, where there hasn't also been like true word gaslighting, kind of gaslighting. Because so my sense of my understanding of myself and the world is gone, and or just badly, badly injured. I don't know what's true anymore. It's like I thought I thought I knew what I was living with when I wasn't, and you told me this and I believed it. So now am I stupid? And so they're like, the self-esteem is just crushed. And unfortunately, and I see this in the women and the men who do the betraying, they are both always so willing to let their partner believe that it was their fault, at least in part. They'll say, well, you didn't, it wasn't your fault, but you got, then I hear this one a lot, and this is going to make my blood boil as you're going to hear this, but it's just that once you had the baby, you got so, you didn't have any more time for me.
Oh man.
Hear that one a lot. So
Once you had the baby, like it was a one-sided
uh-huh. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. After the baby was born, you just completely ignored me and you weren't interested in me anymore. So I had to go get validation somewhere else. Again, there's a legitimate need there, right? Right. What
But
they
the
have is a
validation is
legitimate
it.
need.
He's talking about sex, but he actually said validation.
Right. And so again, he needs legitimate need is validation. You're not getting it from this person. So rather than attuning. So but for the betrayed partner, again, and I see it on the betrayed men too. I was doing something wrong if I wasn't giving her what she needed. So your sense of self is just destroyed. So it's gaining that back. And as much as possible, I basically said, we're going to make them irrelevant, and not them irrelevant as a person, right? We want the coupleship to heal, but you need to get stronger. They're going to get stronger. And I would say that betrayal trauma, and it is betrayal trauma. I run the PTSI. Are you familiar with the PTSI? The uh, uh,
Post-traumatic stress
post-traumatic
injury.
stress and yeah.
Yeah.
So on people, and it is bright red, right? I don't know who I am. I confused. I fear for my life. Unfortunately, this might be TMI, guys, but when I was at my OBGYN, she's chitty chatting. What do you do? And I told her, and she kept asking more questions, and she finally got down to me saying, I work primarily with betrayed partners. And she's like, do you have business cards?
Oh man.
So what does that tell you? How women are finding out that they've been betrayed, and men, right? That's their doctors having to tell them. It's kind of horrible. All of that said, so again, that's when we start looking at post-traumatic stress inventory, fear for my life. Yeah, because guess what? I just found out.
Even not physical life, even in a more abstract sense, my whole life, like the kids and my job and my ability to like understand my reality is crushed. So my life in a general sense is gone, because my concept of what my life was is all up in arms.
Family pictures. I can't look at a picture of us on the ferry and in the Puget Sound now, because I know what you were doing during that time. I
Yeah.
was smiling and you were smiling, but why were,
Can you
I
tell us
didn't know.
how, like, your experience in seeing recovery, like what recovery looks like? Have you graduated a pair of clients and been like, well,
Yeah.
this is our last session, and you've seen where it's been and where it's gone? Like, what have been
So
one of your
great.
good stories?
And this, by the way, I have to tell people this up front. So at the point of last major discovery, and by this, I mean last major discovery, 13 months from that point until we start to normalize. Before that, we're like this roller coaster of emotions
Mm.
because it's first Mother's Day, first Father's Day, first
Mm.
Christmas, and then we hit D-Day. We lovingly refer to it as D-Day or Disclosure Day, or just it's usually Discovery Day. And then it's again, the wind looks the same as it did. It was Valentine's Day. I had somebody who hated Easter because of the Easter Bunny. Long story there, but it was it was yeah. I don't want to. If she listens to this, she'll laugh now. But so again, 13 months, and I just tell both parties, I'm like, you need to understand that you are in it for this month, and it doesn't mean that every single day is like this. But you don't know when it's going to come, right? That's how post-traumatic stress disorder works. And that means, again, to hit that disorder, it means I have to be in it for at least 6 months first. But then, I'm sorry. And then I have another 3 to 5 years of I'm not trusting you. I'm trust but verify. What this looks like is over time, I always say the only way to win trust back is consistent integrity over time, which means if you're the betraying partner, you're over communicating. If I stop and at 7-Eleven on the way home and she says, there's no 7-Eleven on the way home from work. Why did you go to 7-Eleven? Instead of going, you just answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you weren't doing anything wrong, you can just answer the question. Doesn't mean she's not triggered or he's not triggered, but right, that defensive-ness that was there before, and again, that I always see that in those problematic sexual behaviors. There's lots of defensiveness, unwillingness to share information, because I don't want you stumbling too close to where I actually went to lunch. So what this looks like in recovery, and by the way, I see it all the time, if both parties are willing to do the work, meaning she's working on herself, healing, trusting herself again, standing up for herself, which or his self, because that often was a part of it too. You'd get super mad when I'd ask you questions, so you taught me not to. You trained me not to ask questions, and
Mm-hmm.
I am so mad at myself because I let you do that to me, and so
So now I'm
I
going to
didn't.
ask questions, and I'm going to do that on
So
purpose.
now I'm going to
Because
ask questions, and
okay,
and they're learning to communicate. Right? We're talking about this attachment piece. When either one of us is upset, we're learning to have a conversation where I'm able to share with you that I'm upset and what I'm upset about. Sometimes it's going to be dysregulated. And when I see that my partner's dysregulated, I take a deep breath. I try to control myself. If I need to, learning tools, right? Lots of tools, taking breaks. People always say, if you're never go to bed angry, I'm like, if you're angry, go to bed. It's not going to be that bad in the morning.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
So,
interesting.
but again, learning just tools like even writing it down, so that we can address it. We have check-ins twice a week. There's just a lot involved in this.
But you've seen this
Um,
work successfully. You've had
so
okay.
many times, yes. People who are willing to work the process. We call it, we basically break it into 3 stages, which is first safety and stability for the relationship and for the individuals, and then rewriting the story, right? Because what the story we thought we were writing isn't true, and then making meaning of it. So it
Meaning
happened.
making. The secret sauce in
I was
all of
going to say
therapy.
that's Taylor's language.
Yes,
Meaning
Mm-hmm.
making there.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, right? We bring it right back up. And by the way, I do talk about this in terms of the grief cycle. And when I talked about, I mentioned the disclosure process, how that's the funeral, because it's that point where, like, if you think about real life, where funerals sit in the grief cycle, someone's dying or they do suddenly, there's this big event where this all, everybody's coming together and we're all grieving together. Deep breath, and then the next day is when we move on. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is the way I frame this. It's again the day after that disclosure. Actually, it's usually a couple of days after, because there's all this other stuff that's involved with that. Now we're deep breath. Now we're moving forward with it and moving towards that meaning making.
Awesome.
Well, thank you
Latina,
so much, Latina.
If there were a crowd to clap and cheer right now, they'd be losing their minds.
Yeah.
No, there's so much to
So
this. I
good.
know. I appreciate what therapists do. I appreciate our specialties so much, especially with veterans, by the way, near and dear to my heart.
Yes. Yes. They need it. They need it so much.
Well, as a total side note to that, when we use language with our kids early, we're demystifying this. We're taking away shame. We're taking away shame of body parts. I mean, again, my husband is an accountant and he is a fabulous man, but it was me that had the conversation about masturbation with my son and with my daughters, by the way. This is not like a boys and girls kind of thing.
Sure.
It's me that has but if we can give our children and even in our anybody we have stewardship over, anybody in our communities, if we're able to just not make this weird, it's better.
What a gift.
That's a professional
Yes.
phrase. Don't make it weird.
Don't
Don't
make
make
it
it
weird.
weird.
Because it's
Yeah.
not. Again, I'm like, it's not a secret.
That should be the
The
title of
world
this
is
episode.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, like when I work with people around sexuality and stuff, I have a book that I always refer them to. It's called The Guide to Getting It On. And usually it's in the context of like people who are, they're feeling like they're pulling away or they're not sure to talk about sex with their partner or whatever. I say, like, here's a book. It's a fantastic book. It's got pictures that are very graphic and it's not photorealistic, but it's one or two steps down from that. But it's a great access point to discovering more about sex, to learning more about it, how to approach certain things, how to do it safely, how to consent works with all that. So there's my book plug, The Guide to Getting It On. It's on like volume 11 or 12 right now.
Oh, I
recommend
don't
it all
have
the
a
time.
sex book to plug. Darn it.
I have more if you want.
Sorry, everybody.
But yeah, I always plug the Betrayal Bind by Michelle Mays for people who are
Mhm.
starting out in this process who are in that betrayal place of trying to.
Mhm.
And also, I just met these, and I was at a conference last week, and I'm going to plug this because I think it's so awesome. There's an app called Relay. And these young guys, basically, it's an app for holistic recovery for problematic sexual behaviors, where there's all kinds of trackers and suggestions, and I don't even know how to explain this. You have to look at it, but for people who are, and it puts them in groups, by the way, like everything else, because attachment's the real key, right? It puts them in groups of up to 6 people all over the country, so it's not like a lot of the problem with groups is you're like, I'm not going to go down to my local church where there are, 5 other guys that I go to church with, or at work. If we have this, I don't need to know what Bob from accounting is doing. Right. So it gets tricky, but the app is Relay, and it's
Relay.
awesome, and it's inexpensive, and you can do it remotely.
Okay. Well, if you were going to
going
give
on-
someone a free assignment, if somebody is listening to this and they were thinking, I just wish I could go one step in the right direction when it comes to my sexual compulsivity, what is something that you would say that was free, that was small, that they could work on this week?
Go to sexhelp.com.
Oh,
and find resources. There are a lot of books. I happen to have them sitting here all over. I'm surrounded by this. This is a book called Facing the Shadows. It's a workbook, but again, like you were talking about, it's by Patrick Carnes, and it dives into, it's basically a relationship with my self-recovery. Why am I doing this? How do I, what are basic steps to stop? So again, Facing the Shadows, great place to start.
Sexhelp.com. Book. We've talked about some great books. Thank you so much, Latina. I have so many more questions that we could keep going for another 2 hours. But we know you have places to be, and we appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. If you have any questions, dear listeners, all 4 of you, emotionalmenpc@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out. And if you have questions for Latina, send them to us and we can forward them to her, because I'm sure she doesn't want to get bombarded with, is this normal?
Can I send him pictures of a rash? We don't Latina.
Don't need to be doing that.
I would say normal
Latina,
and typical are tricky. Sorry.
Ooh, good.
Ooh, nice. Normal is a setting
there
on the dishwasher. What do I say?
Yes. Well, as always, lovely talking to you both. Pete, love you, man.
Love you too, Taylor.
Thanks again, Latina.